On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Spokane area, welcome to our 2020 primary election candidate forum featuring candidates for State Legislative District 4 State Senate. I am Bev Austin, your moderator, and Mike Bell of the League is the timer. Election day for the 2020 primary is Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. This is a top two primary in which the two highest vote getters will advance to the general election in November. In this forum, the candidates will have an opportunity to present themselves to the citizens, and the citizens will have an opportunity to learn more about each candidate, to help them make an informed decision when they mark their ballots. Before the questions begin, the candidates will have up to 30 seconds to introduce themselves and tell the voters why they are running. I will be asking the candidates questions that have been formulated by the League's Voter Services Committee. Candidates will be asked questions in alphabetical order, with the first speaker rotating with each question. Candidates will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question, with additional time for rebuttal or a follow-up question as appropriate. And each candidate will have the opportunity for a 1-minute closing statement. I will ask as many questions as time allows. Our timer will signal when the speaker has 15 seconds remaining, and again when time is up. Now, before we proceed, a reminder about voting in the primary. You must be registered in order to vote. You can register by mail or online by July 27th, 2020, up to 8 days prior to Election Day. You can register in person up to August 4th, 2020 at the Spokane County Elections Office, 1033 West Gardner Avenue, and at Center Place, 2426 North Discovery Place, Spokane Valley, for same-day registration. These sites plan to be open with pandemic precautions in place and ask that you complete your paperwork online before coming in. Registered voters will receive their mail-in ballots about 3 weeks prior to Election Day. Voters will not need to mark a party preference on this ballot. That was only for the March presidential primary. Ballots must be postmarked or deposited in conveniently located ballot boxes no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day, August 4th, 2020. Ballots can be dropped off on Election Day at one of the voter services centers. For locations of ballot boxes or voter service centers, information about accessible voting units, or other questions about casting your ballot, contact the Spokane County Elections Office, 509-477-2320, or go to www.spokanecounty.org/elections. Contact information for the candidates as well as a voter's guide can also be found on the website of the Spokane County Elections Office. Additional information about the candidates can be found on the League of Women Voters online voter guide, www.vote411.org. Now, I will introduce the candidates for State Legislative District 4 State Senate. They are Marie Danimus, Independent, Mike Padden, Republican, and John Roskelley, Democrat. Before we start the questions, each candidate will have up to 30 seconds to tell the voters why they are running. And we'll start with you, Marie Danimus.
Well, thank you. I am the independent candidate. And, you know, I was raised to believe that if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. I have been a problem solver most of my life. I have been involved in the community since the age of 12. That's what I do in my profession as a Marcom executive and a business development specialist. And now I'd like to do that for the people of the 4th.
Thank you very much. Mike Padden.
Hi, I'm your current state senator, and I have a record of being effective and experienced in representing the citizens and voters of the 4th Legislative District, be it dealing with transportation issues or dealing with our local cities or the county in legislation, but also protecting the rights and freedoms of the citizens of the 4th District. And I hope to be able to continue to do that.
Thank you. John Roskelley.
Thank you, Bev. I'm John Roskelley. I've lived in the 4th District for 48 years with my wife Joyce and 3 kids. I'm running for the Senate to represent the people of the 4th who believe they need a stronger, more relevant voice to represent their issues. Olympia is owned by political action committees, 433 of them, and their lobbyists. If you want to change Olympia, change who you send there. I ask for your vote.
Thank you very much. All right. We're going to our first question, and we'll start with Mike Padden. The question is, what do you consider to be the most important responsibilities of a state legislator? And what specific training, experience, and skills do you have that have prepared you for this position?
Well, I think the most important thing is to represent your district, to listen to the citizens, and to be an effective advocate for them on the issues that they care about. I've been very blessed in my training. I am an attorney by trade, so I've studied the law as an attorney and in law school, and that helps a lot when you're dealing with legislation. In addition, I first was elected to the House in 1980. So I served, was reelected a number of times, served eight terms in the House. Later was appointed a Spokane County District Court judge, which gave me another outlook on things. I was able to start a therapeutic court, a DUI court, and I realized that sometimes through therapeutic courts, you can achieve results and really change people's lives rather than just telling them, hey, you screwed up, off to jail. So that was very rewarding to see people change their lives. And then I've been fortunate to be in the Senate since 2011. I've always been able to get along with people, whether I agree with them politically or not. And I think that's very important. And as a result, I've been able to pass quite a few pieces of legislation that are beneficial to our citizens. In this last session, I was able to get a bill to help the parents of minor crime victims receive compensation when they are at counseling sessions or have to go to court hearings regarding their minors.
Okay, thank you very much. John Roskelley, I'm going to repeat the question, as I will do the same thing for Marie Danimus. John, here is the question. What do you consider to be the most important responsibilities of a state legislator, and what specific training, experience, and skills do you have that have prepared you for this position?
Thank you for that question. I agree with Mike. The most important thing is to represent the people of 4th District. But as a state senator, you also have to be prepared to listen to all the citizens of the state of Washington. I have 3 real main issues to run for the Senate. I'm a kind of a budget hawk. I was a budget hawk for the county commission and 9 years, making sure that the taxpayers receive the services that their money provided. I'm looking forward to protecting seniors. As a senior, I know the problems that they're encountering as they're moving from their house to elder care and the needs that they're going to need from caregivers, and protect their property taxes. I'm also an environmentalist, and I also think that we have a great environment in Washington, that We are able to attract a lot of tourism, and tourism is going to bring in outside dollars into a budget that is presently in one of the worst shapes that we're going to have in the near future and maybe in the foreseeable future. So I am looking forward to working for the people of the 4th District.
Thank you very much. Marie Danimus, what do you consider to be the most important responsibilities of a state legislator, and what specific training, experience, and skills do you have that have prepared you for this position?
Well, I have been listening to the 4th District. And one of the things that you hear most commonly is that they feel like they have been overwhelmed by the decisions that are made on the west side of the state. Part of what my experience will bring to the table is the fact that I have a lifelong history of representing the underdog. And it's important to have someone who both understands the needs of the party that you represent and how that plays into the larger scale of the system that you are trying to be represented in. The ability to communicate with people and find common ground and to go negotiate a pathway for policy that not only serves all of Washington state, but specifically answers to the demands of the 4th District is a skill that I have honed over many, many years of business experience. As a Marcom executive and a business development specialist, my job has been to go into businesses and sometimes nonprofits that are struggling, cut the fat, find where the money needs to be put, not only to solve problems, but to reach those end goals. And this is very similar to the way government functions. Having the ability to do that is something that is going to be key in the coming years because we are hitting a recession. And I absolutely will be supporting policy that is investment minded in that way.
Thank you very much. Our second question is, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Roskelley. What do you think the state role should be in addressing racial injustice and use of force by the police and police oversight? What specific steps would you take or support to address these issues? I think you just need to unmute yourself.
My
John.
apologies. I did.
That's okay.
All right. What we all want is equality in racial and what we all want is equality and human rights. Everyone deserves the same opportunities in education, healthcare, jobs, housing, and to be free of injustice. To understand racial injustice, we have to realize it's been in our society since our ancestors stepped on this continent. It started with our treatment of Native Americans and then African Americans, and still raises its ugly head in our institutions, the workplace, in our communities. In fact, we saw it yesterday in the president's tweet. It's systemic. It's like the blood in our body. It's part of us, and it's difficult to get rid of. Despite every effort of leaders of race over the years, it's still here. We have to work harder to weed it out of society. As far as police oversight, I won't be able to get in too far into this, but fully funded law enforcement is a necessity in our society. Its militarization is not.
Okay, thank you very much. Marie Danimus, I will repeat the question for you. What do you think the state role should be in addressing racial injustice and use of force by the police and police oversight? What specific steps would you take or support to address these issues? Okay, so you got to unmute yourself too.
There we go.
All
Hi.
right.
And I work in film, so that's inexcusable. Well, I already am helping to work towards a solution. With regards to the police, there's something that we need to understand about police brutality and policing in general. One is that it's multi-jurisdictional. We're talking about state, municipal, and county. And so as a state senator, we have to leave a certain amount of autonomy, but provide guidelines to municipalities and counties. Beyond that, I agree with John completely about the militarization of police. I mean, our crime rates have been falling, and yet our police are gearing themselves up for World War III. The money that is being spent on that could be much better directed. And these are the calls that you're hearing in defund the police. They're not talking about eliminating police, of course, but we're talking about redirecting funds to not only help the people, but to also help our police officers who suffer from the highest rate of suicide of any kind of employment that can be pursued. These are all issues that we need to look at. 15 seconds. I am also working with African-American leaders to preemptively look for bias in our court systems, our prosecutor's office, and within the parole system to stop it before it becomes part of their lives.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike Padden, I'll repeat the question for you. What do you think the state role should be in addressing racial injustice and use of force by the police and police oversight? What specific steps would you take or support to address these issues?
Well, first of all, I think that every individual should be treated not only respectfully, but that the state should recognize the value of every individual life. And in the training that we provide to the Criminal Justice Training Commission, we need to adopt policies that recognize that. People don't realize what we've already done. And I was involved with Initiative 940, where the legislature took away malice as a requirement for law enforcement to be sued by individuals for improper use of force. So that is a major achievement. We've also enhanced the training for de-escalation tactics. So I think all that's important. What we don't want to do is lose sight that the vast majority, I'd say 95% plus of law enforcement officers are outstanding citizens who sacrifice for us. They go into harm's way to protect us. And we've seen what happens when you don't have law enforcement like they've done in Seattle, where they've abdicated one whole part of the city. It's not even a part of our country anymore, according to the people that are there. If you leave, they say, go back to America. Well, there have been 2 deaths of African-American males because of that. So we cannot allow anarchy. We cannot allow riots and looting. We've got to respect everybody, including victims of crimes also.
All right, thank you very much. A third question, and I will start with Anne Marie. The third question is, given the precipitous drop in state tax revenues due to the pandemic and increased expenses for safety net measures, what are your top 3 spending cut recommendations at the state level in order to maintain a balanced budget?
Well, one cut in particular that we can make, we've actually just been talking about. I think that there are definitely areas where we are funding our police departments where we could pull back some of that money that is not going to lessen the level of protection either for the citizens or for them. I mean, here in Spokane County, I think we have, it's called the Bobcat, and it is not really used in any particular way for enforcement or protection, but it's just a vehicle that gets driven around. So this kind of spending can definitely be addressed. In addition to that, we have a lot of crime that is pervasive with regards to property. And that's happening here. And it's also happening in specific industries like the marijuana, cannabis industry. We now have a 10-unit state police, a 10-unit state police program that is attacking this because our transparency is so thin that it is causing robberies and putting illegal drugs back on the street. Those can be looked at and eliminated. There's a tremendous amount of fat because we are double doing certain things. And I think the best approach is to go through line item and cut fat and make sure that we're focusing on problems that have collateral damage.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Padden, I'm going to repeat the question. Given the precipitous drop in state tax revenues due to the pandemic and increased expenses for safety net measures, what are your top 3 spending cut recommendations at the state level in order to maintain a balanced budget?
Well, first of all, I don't think people realize how much the state has been spending, and I've been opposing a lot of these budgets that have increased spending by such dramatic effects. Right now, even with some of the reductions made by the governor's veto and other actions taken, we still are growing 19%. And I'm sure John, when he was county commissioner, I doubt that they had many budgets that grew 19%. So we have had a spending problem. I think we should try to limit spending to no more than the rate of inflation and population, which normally would be 5, 6, 7% at the most. But to answer your question more specifically, all the new programs that go into effect July 1st should have been subject to action by the legislature. I and others have called for the legislature to go into special session. We should have gone in right after the revenue forecast came out on June 17th. Now with the new budget year starting July 1st, any reductions have to be more drastic than before. But there's all sorts of evidence of waste, fraud, and abuse in state government. And the one that sticks out like a sore thumb right now is the Employment Security Division, where we lost hundreds of millions of dollars to a Nigerian scam artist. And then the Employment Security Department overreacted. And because of the fraud, they have refused to pay legitimate claims. And we've been helping, our office has been helping all sorts of people go through that whole process to get the legitimate unemployment claims they deserve.
Thank you very much. John Roskelley, given the precipitous drop in state tax revenues due to the pandemic and increased expenses for safety net measures, what are your top 3 spending cut recommendations at the state level in order to maintain a balanced budget?
Well, the budget is worse than anything we've seen before. It's down 15% or more. It's a process, though. It's just not cuts. 2 things need to happen. Yes, we need to cut expenses, but we also have to raise some revenue. Let's start with the expenses. I'd start with permanent hiring freeze and reduce FTEs by attrition, meaning if they took a job change or retired, then we wouldn't replace that. We need to eliminate employee travel completely. Use Zoom and WebEx. Assign OFM to cut the fat, like and reset. Every department budget and department heads have to defend every expense. As for revenue, start by eliminating, reducing tax exemptions. There's almost 700 of them, many gifting of public funds to corporations. Eliminate or reduce special use exemptions, such as free passes for selected groups. Impose or increase user fees and impact fees for public activities that take state maintenance. Consider a capital gains tax for taxpayers under 65 years old, because we have to protect our seniors. And increase luxury taxes on tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, vehicles over $60,000, and boats and motorhomes and RVs over 30 feet. And I can almost predict the legislature will look at fees for certain large businesses.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to another question that doesn't have to do with the budget, particularly, or revenue sources. And I'm going to start with you, Mike. And here's the question. Please explain why you do or do not support statewide just cause legislation or other approaches to address the needs of tenants and landlords.
Well, as a judge, I presided over small claims court decisions where we had tenants and landlords come into court and argue their disputes. And historically, the Landlord-Tenant Act has been a balanced thing, trying to, balance the rights of tenants and the rights of landlords. In recent years, it has become more and more one-sided to favor tenants. And what that does is it reduces the supply of available rental housing. Landlords go into other things, whether bed and breakfasts or long-term housing, whatever it might be. So I think that it's important that we maintain the current system and look at ways. Right now, there's a prohibition against evictions that the governor has. It's been going on, and now he's going on to the end of August. And, that's good for some folks. But for others, they could pay their rent, but they know they don't have to. There's one prominent city council person on the west side that says, I've got the money, but I'm not going to pay the rent. So if you don't pay the rent, what does the landlord do? They've got mortgage payments, they've got expenses, they've got to pay the heat and the electricity. So we've got to get back to a more balanced system. And there's things in the act that favor the landlords and things that favor the tenants. But if you're going to make changes, make them on both sides. That's the way to go.
Thank you very much. John, please explain why you do or do not support statewide the just cause legislation or other approaches to address the needs of tenants and landlords.
Well, I have to be honest with you, I just have not heard of the just cause legislation. But the only time I've been a tenant is while going to school at WSU. And there were rules to live by, even though the school owned the facilities. When I could move in, when to move out, where to put our vehicles, whether we had dogs or cats. We paid by the month, and if we missed a payment, we would be charged a fee. In the private sector, tenants and landlords have an adversarial relationship because of the rules and payments that lead to eviction and then homelessness. Due to this business relationship, the state has to provide consistent policies and regulations for both parties. The tenant is required to follow the rules, and if not, leave. If only recently that landlords have been given 14 days notice. Matter of fact, in 2014 or 2019. Before that, many tenants found themselves homeless after 3 days. The state can provide resources to help low-income tenants who live paycheck by paycheck, find new housing quickly, or help them stay in the housing they're in. The landlord is in business, so it's important the regulations provide financial security for them as well. I will do my best to work with both tenants and landlords and to find a reasonable solutions to evictions and housing instability.
Okay, thank you very much. Anne Marie, I'm going to read the question again. Please explain why you do or do not support statewide just cause legislation or other approaches to address the needs of tenants and landlords. And you got to unmute. You got to unmute.
I did now. Well, I know a little bit more than John, but I'm not familiar with the line item issues in that particular legislation. I am a landlord kind of de facto through being the legal representative for my mother because she owns properties, and I have obviously been a tenant many, many times. And so I think there is a balance, but I think one thing that also comes to play in this issue is the lack of available housing. So supply and demand often comes to play when you don't have just cause to get rid of someone, other than the fact that you know that there are limits to raising the rent and that you might be able to find someone who can pay you more. And so I think that comes into play, but by the same token, it is a business. So there does need to be a balance, but I think what we need to most certainly avoid is a landlord's ability to just kind of play a shell game with tenants until they find the winning one in order to get more rent out of them. So I would proceed with caution on that, but also too, creating more available, affordable housing is going to do a lot to alleviate that problem.
Thank you very much. Our next question, I'm going to start with you, John. And the question is, how would you address the rising homelessness problem in the Spokane area and many other parts of the state? And I think you have to unmute yourself as well. Can you do that?
There we are.
All right.
Okay. All right. Homelessness, lack
Yes.
of affordable housing are at a crisis level. If I was homeless, what would I need? I would want to feel safe. It's important to stop the abuse among the homeless by other homeless and outside street folks. Living without a home has to be the biggest fear for any of us. I would need shelter. They live in tents, they live in cars, they live above the river. They finally enter government or nonprofit shelters. Our job is to make it easier, safer for them to do this. I need food. Poverty means hunger. Along with nonprofits and local churches, the state needs to continue funding these programs. And despite being homeless, kids need to go to school for education, food, and for their mental health. I would need medical, dental, and vision care. Living on the street with poor food, pre-existing conditions, accidents, they need care. We have to find a way to get these services to them where they live and not where services are. I would help create opportunities to advance affordable housing. I would increase mental health funding for treatment at homeless shelters. I would use intervention to keep them out of jail, put them through diversion for minor crimes. I would look for additional ways to strengthen the safety net for these folks. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anne Marie, how would you address the rising homelessness population in the Spokane area and many other parts of the state?
Well, actually, I have a little point of disagreement on your question in that the population of homelessness has not actually raised that much, but we have less beds. So more of them in the sense of temporary beds that we could provide. So they're much more visible on the streets. And what is often understood about homelessness is that it is a symptom of other problems. Most homeless people experience one or a combination of things: mental illness, addiction, the cost of housing, obviously the availability of housing, Section 8 wait lists, family breakdown, and also being recently released from the criminal justice system. So the way that you attack this problem is two-pronged. One, you need a solid temporary situation where you can do proper intake to find out what exactly is causing the homelessness, because everyone has a different story. And then on the opposite end of that, we need to attack the problems that are putting these people in this situation in the first place. And due to the fact that we have a housing crisis and COVID is going to cause a lot of financial difficulty, we are looking at another situation where we will be unprepared unless we provide more temporary areas to take care of these people's needs.
Thank you. Mike, how would you address the rising homelessness problem in the Spokane area and many other parts of the state?
Well, I think we've got to look at some of the things that have been successful. And I look at our faith community, especially the Union Gospel Mission, but also Catholic Charities, the Salvation Army, other groups that provide housing and deal. I mean, I agree with Anne Marie, we've got to deal at the root cause. We can't just be dealing with the symptoms. So the addiction problems, I mean, I think you can't have a situation where there's free distribution of alcohol and drugs and everything else, but you've got to work with these individuals. Some are just down on their luck, and you want to help them, you want to get them clean, and then you want to help them get a job and be a productive member of society, and they feel so much better about themselves. One of the first bill that I was able to help get through the legislature when I was in the Senate was to be able to allow the Union Gospel Mission again to provide eyeglasses to homeless folks. And there had been a state ruling that had stopped that. So we were successful in doing that. The other thing on the housing issue, we want them to eventually be able to get home ownership. I've sponsored legislation that would help deregulate for small units condos so that people could get in entry-level condos rather than having all these apartments being built and having to live there. But I think getting to the cause, looking at what some of our faith communities have done, and then government also has a role to play in this.
Thank you very much. We're going to move forward and give you a chance for your closing statements because we're getting short on time and we want to make sure you have enough time to make your closing statement. So you each will have up to 1 minute for your closing statement. So you get to say whatever you want to say that we didn't ask you. So we're going to start with John, and you will have 1 minute for closing. And I think we got to unmute you somehow. There you go.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
As a candidate, I received many questionnaires from PACs, political action committees. One thing they all have in common is asking me to support or commit to their position. Despite the fact that I may totally agree with them, my answer is always the same. As an elected official, I will not support, oppose, commit, or sign any pledge that removes my ability to perform my job as an elected official for the people. I will promise to read every bill, do my research, take into consideration the facts and science, study the fiscal note, and make my decision based on these factors. As a senator, my job is to work for you, not the NRA, not the unions, not the nonprofits, just you. As I did as a county commissioner, I will ensure the legislature lives within its means, not its budget, that seniors will not be burdened with more property taxes, and that the environment will be protected. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anne Marie, you have 1 minute for a closing statement. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
I was trying. Well, thank you again for this opportunity. I think that when you are representing a whole body of people, it's important that you understand, especially in a democracy, that no one is going to get their way 100% of the time. And while you work towards a satisfactory policy position, you have to keep in mind that you are not always going to make everyone happy, but that at its core, everyone has essential needs and essential desires. Maintaining people's equal rights, their equal access to what government provides and to what this life provides us is my first and foremost priority. Maintaining constitutional efficacy, my own sense of ethics, and making sure that I am providing a pathway for people to live their lives how they want to in America.
Thank you very much. Mike, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Well, first of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on this program and the opportunity for all of us to state our views. I offer a proven record. I offer experience. I offer certainly, I think, success in representing folks. I mentioned the one bill that I got through. I actually got a number of other bills through that were signed by the governor. A number of them came from constituents who had ideas. The other bill that went through this last session would allow us to retain a good foster parents easier by getting rid of an administrative snafu. So I will continue to do that. I think I represent the basic conservative values of the citizens of the 4th Legislative District. They do not want to see big growth in government. They do not want to see their rights trampled on. So I will certainly respect the Constitution, both of the United States and the state of Washington. At the same time, I want to make sure we get our fair tax dollars back that we've put into state government.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for participating in this forum for Legislative District 4 State Senate. Again, they are Marie Danimus, Independent, Mike Padden, Republican, and John Roskelley, Democrat. This concludes our 2020 primary election candidate forum featuring candidates for the State Legislative District 4 State Senate. The League will host a general election forum in late September for the top 2 finishers in this race. Once again, here is a reminder about voting in the primary. Ballots must be mailed or deposited in ballot boxes on inconvenient community locations by August 4th, 2020, and can be dropped off at one of the voter services centers on August 4th. The top 2 vote getters in this race will advance to the general election. In order to vote, you must be registered to vote. You can register by mail or online by July 27th, 2020, or you can register in person by August 4th at the elections office, 1033 West Gardner Avenue and at Center Place in Spokane Valley. For more information on voting procedures, go to www.spokanecounty.org/elections. If you have questions or special concerns regarding casting your ballot, you may contact the Spokane County Elections Office, 509-477-2320. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, thank you to all of the candidates for their participation in this forum. We hope this has given you, the voters, information about the candidates that will help you make an informed decision when marking your ballots by Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. Additional voter services information is available through the League of Women Voters at www.lwvspokane.org. You can also learn more about the candidates at the League of Women Voters online voter guide, Vote 411, that is www.vote411.org. Thank you for joining us.